Welcome back to another episode of Trading Secrets. Today, I am joined by Bachelor Nation alum turned fashion designer, home chef, and content creator, Keenan. Many of you know Kit from her time on Matt James' season of The Bachelor, but what you may not know is that Kit is no stranger to the spotlight before going on the show. Kit was raised in New York City by her famous fashion designer mother, Cynthia Raleigh. Growing up, watching her mother succeed in the fashion industry gave her access and perspective on the fashion industry that many individuals would never have until much later in their careers. Now, a few years later in her career, Kit has branded herself as Gen Z's answer to Martha Stewart by leveraging her knowledge in the fashion industry and adding a twist of her love of cooking. She has been entertaining her nearly 600,000 followers on IG and TikTok with fashion-focused content and hosting a social media cooking series, What's Kit Cooking, where she shares her irresistible recipes to her audience. We're going to touch on all areas of fashion, what's trending, cooking, the pros and cons of growing up in the spotlight with a highly successful parent, and all the career navigation, and possibly we'll see if I can get there a little bit of the money behind Kit's career. Kit, thank you so much for being on Trading Secrets.
Hi.
Ready
it's so
to go?
awkward hearing like my bio.
Yeah, when you
but
hear,
I love it.
When you hear it though, what's like your first initial gut? Are you like, wow, that's great?
I always feel like it's all like I'm an imposter syndrome majorly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you don't think when you say that, do you think your work doesn't live up to everything you've done? Or
I'm just like, I'll never feel content. I'll always feel like I'm like, I need more.
Okay.
I need more validation.
I have questions about so many different things, but I'm going to go off topic a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people deal with that in their careers and stuff. So what do you think the root of that is?
I definitely think it's gendered. I think women are taught to not celebrate their accomplishments as much as men are. And I also think it comes from the fact that my industry is very looked down upon. And being an influencer was never like a super, high ranking job, or like nobody really wanted to use that term. It was kind of a dirty word. Mm-hmm. And being an influencer and working in social media, I feel like I'm always having to prove myself.
Yes.
And prove that my career is legitimate. So I think that's where it comes from as well.
Part of like one thing I've wanted to do since the day one of my first like influencing deal was just talk about the money behind it. And the reason I dig deep into like the psychology behind it, I've wanted to talk about the money behind it because there was such a discount factor with saying you're an influencer. Like my buddies would like laugh and joke and be like, you're pathetic. And I'd be like, all right, you know what? You want to know how much I made on that? And they're like, oh shit, wait, what? And this was like 2018 now. I think that tide has turned a little bit, but there's still this connotation with influencer. When people do ask you what you do, you meet someone at a bar or wherever you're at, do you use the word influencer? How do you describe it? Like, what's your answer to that?
I used to hate the word influencer and I wouldn't say it. Like I would try to use other terms.
Sure.
But now I'm like, I'm an influencer. Sometimes I'll say content creator, but I've like owned that word now. I'm so proud of like how far I've grown in my career, and I love the word now. I think it's really cool.
You.
I mean, hopefully like it should be a good word. Your job is literally to influence people, hopefully in a positive way.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great title. I just think that it's gotten so much like negative views in the past that now it's a little bit tainted, but hopefully we can change that.
Exactly. There is some kind of stigma with it. And for me, it's like there's a bunch of different things I do, and I have ownership of some businesses and stuff, but influencing is a part of my income source. And I still have yet to build up that courage. Like if I meet someone, I am never starting with like
do think
influencer.
It's a little bit.
It's different as like a man, right?
Yeah, I do think
and
for
someone
guys
who's like,
it's a
I'm in my
little
30s. They're like, what are you doing? Like, you're an influencer? What do you mean you're an influencer?
But like, think about like Mr. Beast. Like,
oh my God. I mean,
there's
Mr.
so many
Beast.
people that like, there's amazing male influencers.
Incredible.
Like,
amazing. I mean,
older too.
And they could do things through impact, education, insight. I mean, it's the list is endless. And every year I I always ask guests about how they do, how they got there, some of the money. So every episode, I do a Jason Tells All where my co-host asks me everything, like how much did you make on influencing? How much? So I share all that stuff. And the numbers, it's a big ass industry and there's a lot of money in it. We'll talk about that in a second. I want to get back to where I was going to start right from the get-go, was that you hold 2 big titles in the Bachelor franchise. Do you know what those titles are? Do you know what your claim to fame is in Bachelor Nation? You got 2.
I know one of them is that I think I was the youngest person to ever be on the show.
That was one of them. You nailed it. You
And
know the
what's
second one? Chris Harrison said that you are the best ever dressed individual to ever come from the Bachelor franchise. Did you know that?
Wow.
So those
I
are
didn't
2
know
big
that.
titles
That's a big
to hold.
compliment.
Huge titles to hold.
Yeah.
Were you the youngest ever or no?
I
Or was
think
that
I
just-
think I was
okay,
the youngest
yeah.
ever. I mean, I was 21 when I went on the show,
Mhm.
so that I think that would make sense.
Did you, so 21, you go on the show,
Mhm.
you know, you have a direction of what you're thinking about doing, especially with your mom's industry success. Was reality TV in your future? Like, was that always the goal? I'm going to be 21 when I'm eligible and get on reality TV?
I did not see that coming at all. And in
Okay.
fact, when I told my mom, she was like, I don't think this is a great idea, just because I grew up in like the spotlight in quotation marks because of her business and like just going to events and being in like the fashion and art scene in New York City. But it was more about her brand being like in the spotlight and less about our family. Like, I think we've always had a more private family life.
Sure.
And so when I got the opportunity to go on The Bachelor, I think my family was like, we don't know about this.
Because of
And-
like the risk it could bring to everything else.
I mean, it's a huge risk.
Huge.
Like, image-wise, anything could happen.
Right.
And I always say, like, when people ask me about that aspect, I'm always like, well, you know, if they can't make you out to be someone you're not,
Yeah.
but they can like cherry pick certain
Sure.
parts of your personality and skew it. So of course, what they call a bad edit, like I could have gotten a bad edit.
Mhm.
And so that is always a huge risk. But for me, I was like, I think I felt somewhat trapped like within my mom's shadow in a certain way, and I wanted
Sure.
to do something that was completely on my own. Not that I'll ever like escape from her legacy, and I'm so proud to like be associated with her, obviously. But I do think that I wanted to do something that was like maybe a little bit rebellious, like a little bit on my own. And so I took the risk. And at the end of the day, she was like super supportive of me.
Yeah.
And thank gosh, like I came out pretty unscathed. But I do think it was a big risk.
Okay, here's risk in business. This is a question I got for you. I ended up losing my job because of social media reality TV after like a year of being on like this, the whole spotlight thing. If you went to hometowns, do you think your mom would have taken the risk for her company and gone on, or no?
I've asked her this question now.
Yeah.
And she has always been like, yeah, of course I would have done that.
Sure. Yeah.
But she would have hated it. Like, she would have hated it so much. I just think that she saw like how great of a person Matt was, and she knew that like that we had a connection.
Yeah.
So seeing that, she was like, yeah, of course I would have like done that for you and supported you. But at the end of the day, it's like so scary. And she probably like, I don't know. Again, like it's a big risk.
Fortunately, those lines did not cross.
Yeah.
When you look at your career now with all the influencing that you're doing and the cooking stuff and the fashion work and you're building your brand, do you think you'll go back on reality TV? Is it in your future? Are you against it?
I'm not against it. I don't know about like where I would fit now.
Yeah.
I think like obviously I'm still single, so I would love to meet the love of my life. I don't know if that's on a reality show.
Sure.
But I do think like the format that is The Bachelor.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure that would work again for me unless like I was the Bachelorette.
Okay.
Of course, I would love that. But like also
That's
I
a good
just
career
think that
move.
there needs to be like multiple options for me there.
Okay.
More of like a Love Island sort of situation or setting.
Got it.
But realistically, I think like if I was gonna go back on reality TV, it would probably be in like the cooking sphere.
So in a like more challenge based, you would be open to being the Bachelorette, but that like Bachelor in Paradise, probably not.
I don't know. I'm saying
open.
that, yeah. Options are open.
Options are open.
And I'm saying that format would probably work better for me.
Okay. I got that.
No.
That makes sense. All right. Great answer. Possibly in your future, possibly not. We'll see about that. You had talked about the fact you wanted to kind of carve out your own lane when you went on reality TV. Mm-hmm. Looking back at it now, do you think that risk paid off for your career when you think about the moves you've made?
Yeah, I do think, like my mom said to me this weekend, she was like, I feel like I do meet people now that don't even realize that you're my daughter. But again, I think that this is like the whole conversation about being a Nepo baby.
Yeah.
Which is that like there's everything that I have gained in my life is somewhat associated with my mom and her success. And there's not a way for me to just completely like separate myself from that. So I think that in some ways, like going on The Bachelor and doing that was me trying to kind of go against like what I was taught about privacy and like protecting my brand.
Yeah.
But I do think that like, yeah, I think that I'll always be like my mother's daughter.
Yeah. Interesting. I have heard you talk about this publicly. Sometimes it's difficult being coined Nepo baby. And then I heard of
I don't think it's difficult being coined a Nepo baby.
How would you define it then?
Well, first off, I think that there is a little bit of confusion about the word, and I think that people who grow up with privilege aren't necessarily Nepo babies.
Yeah, I don't think that's what it is.
So I know I grew up with privilege, and I know that my career does slightly overlap with my mom's, but it's not as if I'm a fashion designer and therefore I'm a Nepo baby because my mom's a fashion designer and I became a fashion designer. That is like the classic definition of it.
Yeah.
So like if someone's dad is an actor and so then they get auditions and then they get to become an actor.
Yeah.
But I do know that my mom's career and the way that I grew up has allowed me to have the career that I do now.
Right. I want to ask a question about this. I listened to the one podcast you did with your mom, and I thought it could help people back at home that are struggling with their careers. She quoted Eleanor Roosevelt. I actually just put the quote on Threads because I loved it so much. But she said in a podcast you guys had, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." And I think that leads into a little bit of this conversation. So someone who might have dealt with that in the past, what advice would you give for people back home that regardless of the situation is, like maybe there's not one person listening that's a Nepo baby, but in times they feel inferior, they feel like maybe they're in the shadow, or they feel like they're living behind something else, whether it's their boss or their colleague, whatever it is. What advice would you give to them?
I mean, I think this goes back to our initial conversation about like feeling like you have to prove something.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's really self-acceptance and like learning that you are enough.
Yeah.
Which is like something that you got to do in therapy. And I'm working on it. I think we all are. But at the end of the day, I think it's like looking back, even if you have to write it down, like your accomplishments, what you're proud of yourself for. And then thinking about like your big long-term goals is really helpful with that, because you're just like, this is everything I've done. It's almost like a roster of everything you've accomplished and that you're proud of yourself for. And then look long-term, like past whoever you feel is dwarfing you.
Yeah.
Look past them and think about like what if that person wasn't there? What would my goal be? And work towards that goal, and hopefully that will help you like get past that, I guess, just like barrier that you feel with that person.
No, that makes perfect sense. I think that's good advice for anyone that feels stuck or there's noise out there. Get past that barrier, do your thing. And I think you're right. Even like personal work helps professional work. So doing the self-work to understand your value will help your professional navigation and creation when you're doing what you want to do, how you want to do it. I think that's huge.
I think it's also about thinking about like your value outside of work.
Yeah.
You know, I think in our society, people are generally quantified by their job, and at the end of the day, it's like you are so much more than that. And if you do that personal work to realize that, it can only help you in your professional life.
Totally. I think people are also quantified by like numbers, right? How much do you make? How are you doing financially? Things like that. What would you say your overall, of course your family's had big success monetarily and publicly. What is your relationship with money? Like, are you someone that's like, I need that next paycheck? Are you someone that's like, money means nothing to me, I'm just focused on A, B, or C? How would you define your relationship with just money?
This is another conversation that definitely needs to be unpacked in therapy. My mom grew up with not a lot of money. She grew up pretty poor. Her mom was like a stay-at-home mom and art teacher, and my grandpa, her dad was a science teacher. So she's had a lot of success, but I think that she's always had a strained relationship with money. And like growing up with that was definitely changed the way I thought about money. And then my dad also like has struggled with money over my life. My parents are divorced, and he, like, when I was going to his house and growing up, we struggled with money. So I think that people have seen my life from sort of like the storytelling point of view, which makes a lot of sense. Which is like the Gossip Girl lifestyle, privilege, money, private school, all of that stuff. But I also think I have like a little bit of a balance there with growing up with my dad and his like career and problems with money, and then also my mom's like actual mentality around her success has made me a little bit more grounded than maybe I like could have been if I was just like showered.
If it wasn't that way.
Yeah,
that makes sense. All right, you can use, we have made a safe word for all the listeners out here. The safe word is London. So if we say London, next topic, and you could use the safe word at any time. Kit and I were at the Grey Goose Suite yesterday at US Open, and she was like, I don't know, I'm a little nervous for this podcast. I go, we're going to make it good. This is one where you can use London if you want, but I'm curious about it because my second book is all about relationships and money. And so just seeing like your mom's success and the financial success she had, and then some of the stuff you just said about your dad. When you think about how you look for a partner moving forward, do you think it's a challenge when you have one person that is just dominating financially and dominating career? Or do you think it can work from a compatibility standpoint? It just has to be the right type of communication and style. I guess, what is your take when the worlds of relationships, professional life, and personal life collide as one, given what you've seen with mom and dad?
Well, to be clear, my parents got divorced before I even like knew. Like I was like under 1 year old. So I never like saw them together, but then my mom has been in other relationships that I've seen, and I do think that having like a big disparity between how much people make in a relationship, especially like when it's the opposite gender roles than are
like
considered
traditional.
traditional.
Yeah. Which is changing drastically, but you're right?
I do think that adds like a big strain, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that it can't work. It's just it requires a lot of communication. And like I have dated people that are way more wealthy than me, and also people that I've literally like paid for every Uber, paid for every dinner, all of that stuff. And I think that in those relationships, it's always a conversation that needs to be had.
Okay. I think that's a very fair answer. We've talked about your relationship with money. Let's do a little rapid fire. What is one thing that you think you spend too much money on, but no matter what, you'll keep spending it on that thing? It could be anything. It could be travel, restaurants. One thing you think you spend too much money on, but you'll continue to spend no matter what, because it's there.
My gym and workout classes.
Okay, that's a good one.
Because my gym and workout classes is probably number one, and then therapy number two. And I think that those things, it's an investment in myself that is worth it forever and always.
Okay, let me take a stab in the dark. Gym and workout classes, if that's your number one, I'm going to say you go all in pretty good. $1,500 a month?
I honestly think less than that.
Because okay.
I have an Equinox membership.
Yeah, so it's like
I get invited to a lot of stuff through work, like classes through work. And other than that, I maybe take like a few classes outside of Equinox.
Okay, so less than that. That's great. And then stay tuned to the recap. We'll talk about how you can actually deduct workouts and exercise from your income, especially in the space you're in. So stay tuned to the recap. Now you're going to have to listen to the recap. Yeah. All right, let's transition to some of your work stuff and something that's extremely relevant to the work you're doing. You were just doing a campaign with Hailey Bieber and for her new line, Road. And I think people, especially people that listen to this podcast, are like, how the hell? Hannah Berner is like now best friends with Hailey Bieber and Justin Bieber. Keenan's up there doing work with Hailey Bieber, like hand in hand, doing pictures, posts. Talk to us how that comes to light behind the scenes business-wise.
Okay, so let's be clear. I don't work with Road in a paid sense.
Okay.
So that was not an ad.
Okay.
But for an event like that, they will like reach out to talent, to influencers, and have us come like for a brand like that where Hailey Bieber is the face.
Yep.
And they have like a celebrity backing. I think they use that obviously to their benefit. And they know that influencers will come because they're either fans of Hailey or because they know that content will perform well.
Okay.
So, I mean, even for me, like going to that, I'm such a fan of Hailey and I love the product.
Yeah.
But I also knew that like going there and getting that content would perform well on my channel. Yeah. So it's absolutely worth it for me.
Did it perform well?
Yeah.
Okay. Of course it did. So behind the scenes there, the idea behind Hailey Bieber's team is they're like, we're going to get enough really credible, highly engaged influencers there. We'll know that they'll want to be there because Justin and Hailey are there. And as a result of that, we're not going to have to pay them. They're going to get the content, but their company is going to have a huge splash for impressions. Like that's the business and the numbers behind it. Got it. With your clothing line that you released in 2018 titled Kit, did you guys do anything similar to that from an influencer standpoint?
So that was a project that I was working on in in college, sorry.
Okay.
And it was such a fun project for me because I think I've always looked up to my mom and her brand. And there were times when I was like, I obviously appreciate the fashion industry so much, but I think I didn't really understand like the business side of it. So doing that, like launching a line and learning about production and manufacturing and shipping and all the like not so glamorous, not so fun side of the fashion industry was really helpful for me because I realized, number one, I probably don't want to do that.
Okay.
Like long term as a career. And number two, it just made me realize like, wow, my mom works really hard. And like her company is like a well-oiled machine that has been working so well for like since the 80s. So like it was a big learning experience overall for me.
Okay, got it. One thing you just said, I've looked up to my mom and her brand. And then there was another quote from a podcast, and she said, these are her words: I run a business. My philosophy is more about making something special, really special clothes, but present it in an epic, entertaining, never seen before way, and a little bit dangerous. Your response to her was, your brand is all about adventure. So that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
How would you define what your brand is and what you want it to be?
I think I have a balance of I think I have like my niche is really between fashion and style and then food and like the food and beverage space. So I think I have like a really fun niche that I get to play in a lot because I think there's a lot of overlap between fashion and cooking. And I've loved like exploring that space because there's in making a garment, my mom and I talk about this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very similar process to how I create a recipe and like finish a dish. And it's both like a really fun creative process that I think I have learned from her and I've been able to make into my brand.
Okay, and you've made it into your brand. And I also read that you've teamed up with your mom to release a line that's fashion forward with aprons and oven mitts.
Yeah.
From like a business perspective, how has that done selling items like that aligned with your brand?
Yeah, I love that collab because I mean, honestly, these days my mom and I don't get to work together a lot.
Yeah.
So working on that was really, really fun. And I just loved it because what I love about fashion is that like you are you're pulling an idea out of thin air and you're like going through this crazy process of sketching and samples and manufacturing and finally getting to the final product.
Okay.
And it's such a long process that I'm not used to because my creative process is with cooking and like at most it might take a day to make something and like maybe a marinade overnight, but like it's not such a long process. So for me that was like really fun because I got to be so involved in something that was there were a lot more iterations. It took a longer time. There were so many people involved. And so for me it was nice to see like that process and how long it takes to build a garment.
Yeah. Is that business still running? Are you still selling those items?
So that was a collaboration that my mom and I did that we sold on her website.
Okay. When you do, someone just doesn't know, when you do a collaboration like that, do you create a certain amount of supply and then once it's sold out, you're just done?
Yeah, that's usually how influencer collabs work, like with fashion brands or with any product. It's usually like a set amount of product is created. The influencer will help promote that product and then it will be sold out. And then sometimes like I have a friend who does hair rollers. Okay. And she did a collab with Luxie Hair, which is a hair brand. And they sold out of the product and then now they have the opportunity to do another collaboration. Got it. Maybe with a different product or introducing the same product again in a different iteration or whatever. Okay. So I think that's normally how it works. Okay. For people that are curious but don't know, do you usually make more money if you get, we were at Grey Goose yesterday. Let's just say Grey Goose. I know it's not a deal. I know it's not an ad, but let's just say Grey Goose gives you a flat fee to do a TikTok and an Instagram post. I think you have to be 26 to work with alcohol brands. Oh, wow. There you go. Is that the case? 27.
Okay.
Oh, 25.
25. That's the FTC guideline. Okay. So you're not doing Grey Goose. That's even better for the example. But suppose you were, and you're going to charge them a rate for like 2 posts, 2 TikToks. Or you're going to do a collab in which you say, I'm going to do 2 posts, 2 TikToks. So your deliverables are the same. Which typically do you end up making more money on? A signature collection or like a straight up brand deal?
Usually, I mean, it depends on what the like payout is for the collab.
Okay.
Because sometimes it's a flat fee.
Okay.
And then sometimes it's a like rev share situation.
Got it.
So you're
Okay.
making commission on every single product that's sold.
Okay.
Or sometimes it's a flat fee. So there is, if you're doing a rev share collab, there's like there's opportunity for a lot of money to be made.
Got it.
But in terms of like a flat fee collab versus just a post collab, like brand deal, those can be the exact same amount of money.
Got it. Makes sense. Makes sense. When you look into your like year, like as you plan for 2024, do you create certain financial goals or brand goals? Like what does your business look like? Do you say like, I want to make $1 million this year? Or do you say, I want to make sure I land a year deal with Gucci? And again, I'm making this off the top of my head, but how do you like plan for your business, either from a financial perspective or like strategic goals, like when you look into 2024?
Yeah, I have a financial advisor, which is honestly like the best thing that I've ever done for my business because I don't know a lot about this. And again, I am 24, so there's still a lot more time for me to learn.
I read an article, sorry to interrupt. I just read an article, Wall Street Journal, that I'm going to ask you, at what age do you think the average American feels like they've reached where they need to reach when it comes to understanding finances and money? What age do you think it is?
Like 65 when they retire.
It's different categories for everything, but just like personal finance, it was 54.2. That's the average age people feel like they have a grasp on it. So when you say 24, like you're way ahead of the 8 ball. But
I think the point of it is to say that like if you don't know what you're doing, it's really helpful to outsource.
Yeah.
So I know that I don't know what I'm doing a lot of the time. And so I have help.
Okay.
But in terms of like goals, I set financial goals, like, you know, dollar amounts.
Sure.
And then I also set like, I want to have this many year-long partners that I'm working with, like contracts. And then in terms of like in terms of meeting the overall dollar sign goal. Yeah. Other than that, then I think about like monthly, how many other deals that I should try to fit in there and agree to.
Got it. Okay. And so is it fair to say that every year you think that your revenue has increased since you got off the show, or have there been setbacks at all?
So my manager is in the corner and she's saying it's exponentially grown.
Exponentially grown. Really? Wow. What year has been the biggest like increase year over year?
Oh, wow. I would probably say last year versus the year before. Probably. I mean, this year we're going to do more than last year, but I would say the biggest jump was last year versus the year before.
So 2022. And so for everyone who can't hear, Kit's manager is in the room. What is your name again one more time? Shayna Davis. And do you own your management company?
Yes.
Okay. What's it called? Ponte Firm. Let's give a little shout out here. So shout out Ponte Firm. So year 2022 was significantly better than 2021. That was one of the biggest jump. And then 2023 will be better than 2022.
Yeah.
Okay. If you had to attribute one thing to just like Kit's business execution performance that has done that, or it could be outside factors that's not necessarily related to Kit's execution, what would you say the number one thing that's caused the big increase?
Well, I think there's a variety of factors. Overall, I would say that Kit's just grown more as a name. Also, she's grown a lot more in her career in terms of also like the direction she's going in with her What's Good Cooking, growing a series like that. And, those types of things lead to other opportunities that are unique for her. I would say that in terms of how we work together, I feel like she's just made much more of a brand for herself within like the lifestyle space with Posh though, like specialty wise.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean,
Okay.
that's just one thing in particular.
Yeah. I think that's a good, like the more
number
special.
one, the major thing there is that I grew exponentially in followers from being on The Bachelor.
Right.
Which is obviously that changes like how much I get paid for every deal.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, it is about numbers. But also, I think that when we started working together, I was doing, I didn't really have a niche.
Yeah.
I was doing like a lot of lifestyle and just like a lot of outfit content, like styling content.
Yeah.
But I didn't really have a niche. And I think once I found my niche by sharing my recipes and my cooking content, that was when I was able to build like a really strong and committed community that is helpful in like continuing to grow year over year. Because I think we see a lot of people like in the Bachelor world who might go on a show, gain a ton of followers, but then if you don't cultivate a brand and have a committed community, that is, it's only like I've seen friends of mine lose followers over time because it's just like they're losing relevancy and they're not creating a longer term strategy and community.
Yeah, I think because relevancy is so hard, especially in the business world, to keep up with, but community's not. Like building a niche, building a powerful brand, and building a community isn't as hard as it is to keep up relevancy. And when you keep that community, whether you're in a headline or not, whether you're relevant or not, they stay with you.
If you have a community, you're always relevant.
Always to that community, right?
Yes.
Which is huge. And that's obviously a huge reason why you've had the success you've had, which is pretty cool. When you look at, and I don't know who I should ask this to. Should I ask this which direction here?
I could probably answer.
TikTok or Instagram, which one, if your financial advisor looks at your revenue and says, this money came in from TikTok, this money came in from Instagram, which one is larger?
So this is changing so quickly.
Okay.
Like last year, absolutely Instagram all the way.
Like 4 times, 3 times, if you had to guess.
Probably like 3 times.
Okay.
Maybe 4, honestly. And then this year, I've like really been trying to grow my audience on TikTok, and I've like finally found my groove with it. And I still have a lot of room to grow for sure. But I think there's like less of a disparity now between my Instagram following and my TikTok. And I have a little bit of a different community over on TikTok, which is really fun for me. So this year will be like the first year where I think those will be way more equal.
Okay, so it's starting
Instagram
to
is still
shift a little
just
bit.
because I have more followers on Instagram.
Okay, gotcha.
But it's definitely starting to balance out.
It's starting to balance out. Okay, I like that.
And there's just a lot more opportunities on TikTok now.
Right.
Like last year, even there were so many brands it was still a wild, wild west. Like people were scared to do sponsored content on TikTok. Brands were scared to do sponsored content and ads on TikTok because of the guidelines were kind of unclear, and there was just like how much are people getting paid and whatever. And this year, I feel like so many brands, I will even ask some brands like if I don't feel like the partnership fits well on Instagram, I'll be like, okay, can we maybe shift this to TikTok? And they're way more open than they were
interesting
in previous years.
Okay, that's pretty cool. All right, Instagram versus TikTok, you got your answer. You and your mom had the Ageless podcast. I saw that there has been an episode since 2022. Was that a profitable business venture? Would you recommend podcasting? Do you have a take on getting into that space?
I think podcasting is like anything else. It's kind of like it is what you like. The grass is green where you water it.
Ooh, that's good. Yeah, that's a good trading secret right there.
The grass is always greener where you water it. You water it. And so for me, I think that we just didn't have like enough time or infrastructure to like make that project long term and amazing.
Okay.
But I love guesting on podcasts. I love talking. I love learning. I love listening to podcasts. So I think, I know podcasting is super successful and a great
Gotcha.
path.
Are you and Mom going to continue it?
I don't think so right
Okay,
now.
different direction for Kit.
Yeah.
All right, I want to get into the whole fashion world. We talked a little bit about Sophia Richie. We talked a little bit about quiet luxury before the podcast. Let's start with this for the people listening, the consumers that need to look up to someone like you to help with what's happening in the fashion world. Let's get into some consumer talk. What right now is trending in the fashion world for people that don't know, like where they should shop next or what they should look for, what's in?
Mm-hmm. I mean, definitely. I think trends in general have become way more fragmented because of TikTok.
Okay.
And just because like there's so many influencers now that you can really find your niche community and like there's trends and sub-trends and like sub-trends and all of these little communities that are just like building and iterating off. But so trends aren't as centralized as they used to be, like in fashion. But I know number one, I would say right now is probably clean girl aesthetic, like Sophia Richie core, which is what you're talking about, quiet luxury. Just moving away from logo mania and like when people were really obsessed with wearing like Supreme and Gucci and like branded names all over everything, which to me is still super cool. It's not my style, but it's super sick. And I think for me at the end of the day, like you really shouldn't, your style should be timeless in a sense that it should not just like follow whatever's trending right now. Thank gosh, what is trending right now is kind of that timeless style. It's like basic, you know, vintage vibes, but it has been in the past, like obviously way more out there and like gaudy. So if you are still on that, good for you. But I'm supportive of the quiet luxury trend.
Okay, people that are out there that want to fit in with what's fashion forward, but they don't have as much expendable income, where would you tell them to shop? What should they look for as a consumer? Where can they go to get something that still has a nice fashion cut to it? But right now, inflation, things are expensive. They just can't afford some of the high brands.
Vintage and consignment is number one. I think like you can obviously find amazing, reliable pieces like on the RealReal or on Depop. I also work with a company called Pickle, which they do like clothing rentals in New York, so you can help like keep a revolving wardrobe in that way. But yeah, I think people, a lot of times I get this question about like affording just the high cost of having like a super stylish wardrobe. And it really does not have to be that way. And I think the answer to that question is oftentimes like, oh, well, Zara has good options and whatever. But it's like those things are going to fall apart in a year. So if something is vintage or like you're getting it at a secondhand store, you know that it's already had a whole life. And it's been like, it's had a whole, like it's survived that life and now it's going to like continue to serve you. So that's probably where you want to look for like high-end items that are going to stand the test of time.
Okay. What is one piece of clothing that was a high-end item? How much did you spend on it that was like the worst purchase? You're like, that was Zara type quality. That was shit.
Ooh. Oh my gosh. This is so funny, but I have lived like so many different lives and aesthetics online just because I grew up like on social media. And when I was in high school and I started Instagram, I had a very different aesthetic than I do now. I was like definitely way more edgy. I had like colored hair and I was like in a sort of New York City like subculture that was very skate and like art focused. And I remember I bought this pair of Bape sneakers, which were like, I bought them on eBay and they were so expensive for me at the time because I was like spending my own money that was like I earned from like a summer job. And I remember I think they were like maybe like $700 or $800.
Okay.
And I got them from eBay and they were like definitely fake because I wore them like a few times and they were just like falling apart.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, I can't believe I did this to myself. That's so bad. So now when I'm like buying secondhand, I try to go from an authenticated source.
Okay, so be careful with eBay. Zara, it might look good, but it might be gone within 6 months to a year, so you won't get your money's worth. And then I think what you just said at the end is really, really important. Consumers out there that are buying an authenticated source, how does someone know if it's an authenticated source?
I mean, there's certain companies that
okay, so like, credible companies, like you would know
the Real or like Rebag or some of those.
Those are them. All right, before we get your trading secret, I wanted to ask you your best marquee deal, whatever information you could share about it. It's either paid opportunity for speaking or posting or showing up somewhere or something you look back at your influencing career, you're like, this is my Grammy. Like this was it for me. What was the best deal you've done?
It's definitely, it hasn't come yet, for sure.
Oh, interesting.
I think that there's, like, it has yet to come, for sure.
Okay.
But I do have some, like, longer-term partners that whenever I get a new opportunity, I'm, like, forever grateful. And one of them is American Express.
Cool.
So I have loved working with them, and I've worked with them, like, a few years in a row, and I just like love how much they have supported my work in the food and beverage space as well.
Okay.
They're super flexible for a company that like has to have all the hashtags and all the guidelines and all of that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I heard American Express actually at their US Open suite has a dress code.
Ooh,
I heard like to be in the American Express suite, you have to like wear a certain type of style, and they like send it to the guests.
I have noticed dress codes so much more recently, like in recent years, just even at like membership clubs in New York and like all of that. And everyone at first I think was really against it and like tried to push against it.
Okay.
But maybe it's because I didn't have a uniform in high school, but like I love a dress code.
Okay.
Number one, I think I dress like...
You meet the dress code anyway.
I meet the dress code. But I also think it's like, it's really great to go somewhere and know that everyone is like dressed in their Sunday's best there.
Yeah.
Like when I was living in LA, I think I would see people going out all the time in just like jeans and sneakers. Like, to the nicest clubs in LA.
Yep.
And I would always wear dresses and heels and stuff, and people, why are you wearing that?
Right.
But I love like going somewhere and seeing everyone in like a suit jacket and like I don't want to see sneakers when I'm out or like whatever. I just think it's really nice.
That's why you loved London.
Once in a while.
That's why London was such a good vibe for you, because they're all dressed up. All right, let's end with this. Tell me this. You can manifest. You haven't got that Grammy deal yet. If you like paint that Grammy deal, what brand is it? And like if you can share, you don't have to if you don't want to, like the ideal dollar amount you want to get in that next big deal. For example, I'll give you one for me. Mine, I'm going to say, let's think about this long and hard. I'm going to go. I want right now Capital One. I've worked with them before on a year deal. And I want Capital One to sponsor my book. So I want them to be behind my second book. I want them to sponsor the tour and like all the podcasts I do, like a whole segment, all Capital One. And I want it to be, I'm going to say $300,000. I'm manifesting it.
Okay.
Give me one for you if you don't mind.
Okay. I think for me, I would want it to be a big box brand, like a Target.
Okay.
And I would want it to be a cookware line with like a big box brand so that my product can get into the hands of younger people in like a more affordable way. And I would want it to be a rev share deal.
Rev share, see? Smart. Okay.
Yeah.
What percentage of rev would you want from it? Perfect world.
20%.
20%. The goal would be to make 7 figures on it?
Yeah.
There you go. Kit Keenan dreaming big. I got to dream bigger. I just know Capital One isn't going to give me a percentage of their rev, but I like it. That's a good marquee deal. All right, Kit, one trading secret. So a trading secret, someone couldn't learn in a textbook. They couldn't learn from Google or YouTube. They can only learn from you, given your experience. It could be about money management, career management, life management. It's just one trading secret they can only get from Kit Keenan. What can you leave us with?
I have one that one of my best friends told me, and it's you can be annoying or you can be unemployed. And it's really about the fact that, like, don't be worried about following up. Don't be worried about being annoying. Like, put yourself out there, because you can either sit back and be quiet and not be annoying, or you can, like, be annoying to the right person and probably get your dream job or dream partnership or dream brand deal or whatever.
I think that's a great quote. And even, like, you think about the influencing world, there might be some hate out there. People are like, oh, that's annoying. You can be annoying or you can be unemployed. And the people that are trying to please everyone, and the people that aren't following up, and the people that aren't doing the stuff you got to do to be out there and be in front of things, they might be on their way to being unemployed or being stuck in a track they don't want to be, right? Handcuffed to a desk, a job, a career they don't want to be in. I think that's a great trade secret, one we've never had before. Kit, if people want to learn more from you, follow what's going on with your cooking, seeing everything you got going on, where can they find you?
My Instagram and my TikTok are at Kit Keenan.
At Kit Keenan, and watch out in the next year. Target coming your way.
Let's see.
She's putting it out there. Kit Keenan will be in Target. We're putting it out there right now. Kit, thank you for being on Trading Secrets.
Thanks for having me.